So what does it really take to make a marriage work today? We all have an idea in our heads, right? But underneath all of that, there's this whole set of unwritten rules, these fears and pressures that we rarely ever talk about. Today, we're going to pull back that curtain. Our guide for this journey is a fascinating book called Tales of Modern Marriages. And what it does is it captures these real-life stories and anonymous confessions from marriages in Kenya. It contrasts the ideal that we all hear about with the often harsh, practical reality that people are facing every single day. You know, we see the happy photos online, we hear the romantic stories, but the central question this book really forces us to ask is a powerful one. Is the reality of modern marriage something entirely different from the picture we've all been sold?
Okay, let's just dive right into this. We're going to break down the key findings from the book, everything from individual fears and these intense battles over money to the immense pressure of society and social media. And look, while these stories are from Kenya, you might find that these themes hit a lot closer to home than you think.
So before we get into all the complications, we've got to establish the baseline, right? What is the official blueprint for a happy marriage that we're all supposedly working from?
And yeah, the book defines it pretty much just like you'd expect. Trust, respect, open communication, supporting each other through thick and thin. It's the ideal, right? It's the goalpost. But as we're about to see, just getting there is like navigating a minefield of modern challenges.
And this is where the first cracks in that blueprint start to appear. The book argues that long before a couple even says, "I do," each person is bringing their own baggage, their own fears, and their own unspoken anxieties to the relationship.
And what's so interesting is how the book breaks down this hesitation. It's not just a simple fear of marriage. No, it's this really complex knot of anxieties. Can I actually afford this? Is this the right person forever? Am I really prepared for the challenges that are going to come? Then, the source goes even deeper, into a topic that is honestly often surrounded by silence, the experience of men as victims of domestic abuse. And it points out that a major barrier to getting help is this profound fear of not being taken seriously or, being seen as weak. And to really illustrate this, the book shares the powerful story of a man named Mr. Kimenjo. For 15 years, his neighbors heard screams coming from his house every single night. You can imagine what everyone in the village assumed was happening. But the reality, as revealed in the book, was the complete opposite of what everyone thought. His wife was the one abusing him, and she would scream to make the neighbors believe that she was the victim. It's just a chilling example of how perception isn't always reality, especially behind closed doors. All right, so from those individual fears, we now turn to what might be one of the biggest fracture points in any relationship: money. And according to the book, this isn't just about budgets. It's a deep, fundamental battle over trust. The book presents this incredibly stark contrast. On one hand, you have the theoretical advice, right? Work together, share costs, build as a team. But then it reveals what it calls the street-smart advice given in the real world. A man should protect himself by making sure all the major assets are solely in his name. This isn't collaboration, it's defense. And the voices of these anonymous participants in the book, well, they make this crystal clear. This quote reveals this profound sense of mistrust, a fear that any shared contribution can be twisted into a claim for everything. It's a cynical, but apparently pretty common perspective. And that sentiment is taken even further with this next, pretty shocking quote. Calling modern marriage a long con game is an extreme viewpoint, for sure, but its inclusion in the book really reveals the depth of disillusionment and fear that some people are feeling. It reframes marriage not as a partnership, but as a potential trap.
So the challenges don't just come from within the relationship. The book argues that modern marriages are under constant pressure from the outside world, from family, from culture, and from society at large.
The book lists a whole host of these external stressors. There's the pressure to have a picture-perfect life, a fast-paced modern world that leaves almost no time for actual connection, this confusion over changing gender roles, and, of course, the classic issue of family interference. This quote from another participant just sums up the book's argument perfectly. You might choose one person, but you can't really escape the culture they come from. The community's norms, their expectations, and their problems, they inevitably seep into the marriage itself. And that brings us to the most modern pressure of all, that glowing screen in all of our pockets. The book dedicates a lot of attention to the unique impact of social media on relationships. This phrase from the book is just, wow, it's incredibly powerful.
a sad generation with happy pictures. It captures that core conflict perfectly. The curated, perfect-looking lives we see online often just serve as a mask for private struggles and unhappiness.
So why do we do this? Well, the book suggests it's not just about showing off. It's rooted in something much more human. A fear of being judged, a need for validation, and sometimes just a desperate desire to escape a reality that feels too difficult. But the book doesn't just diagnose the problem. It also offers a kind of prescription. It suggests that social media can be a force for good if we use it intentionally, to connect with genuinely supportive people, to practice self-care by curating your feed, and to use the platform to talk openly about mental health. And that leaves us with this final lingering question. We're sort of caught between two narratives, the perfect images on our screens and the difficult, complicated tales from this book. So the question for all of us to think about is, where in that huge space between the ideal and the reality does the true story of modern marriage actually lie?